Yo, what's up? This is Alex with Gray Area. Welcome to our series Spotlight, where our mission is to build a bigger and more united house music community by sharing new and exciting artists, festivals, and event brands with you. In this interview, you hear from Illyus and Barrientos, a house duo from Glasgow that releases on Toolroom, Glasgow Underground, and elrow music. Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more interviews just like this.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for taking the time out to talk to me today.
Yeah, no worries.
Much appreciated. So I'm going to hop right in here with a little bit of a strange question, but how would you explain your music to someone who has never heard dance music before?
Our music?
Yeah.
For me, if someone that's never heard dance music before, I would say our music is energetic and fun.
Yeah, I would say that's a good, accessible to anyone that's got a passion for life, I suppose, that wants to enjoy a good time. That's the way I would describe it.
Feel good. That's all we want. We just want people to feel good when they listen to the music.
Most definitely. I think that's an apt description. Can you guys talk about what your musical upbringing was like? What kind of music did your parents listen to when you were growing up?
Oh, my parents, my mum mostly, that's my influence. So like she was a mad Elvis Presley fan, but then it was things like the Rolling Stones and Motown and Bee Gees and funk and soul. It was kind of like it was more in that direction, that everything had a rhythm, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which then allowed me to move into hip hop. But yeah, my mum just was crazy about people like that, like I mentioned, just had to be very, very rhythm based. George Benson, she was a massive George Benson fan as well, huge. And then the legend that was Marvin Gaye, like very soulful and very sexy. Maybe that's why I've moved into what we do now, like because it's all soulful and sexy, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Mine was totally different. My dad is just a straight up classical music fan. That's what he loves. 90% of what he listens to is just classical music, and he likes the weird stuff as well. He likes, he likes Shostakovich and Stockhausen, all the really strange modern classical. But and the other 10% was jazz. So that's all he listens to. He just has no range. That's it. He doesn't say, "Oh, I can appreciate." Someone like Elvis, because he simply doesn't listen to him and doesn't pay attention. But that's just what he was like. And my mum is more like, well, she still listens just to a lot of Latin music. So a lot of local, she still loves a lot of local chilling music, which is called cueca. So she likes a lot of cueca music, and she likes samba and everything, just anything Latin she loved. So I didn't really have I didn't really know much outside of that. I never really knew what was going on in terms of terms like Marvin Gaye and Elvis. I just never really I never sought it out.
So Illyus, for you, it wasn't too much of a leap to hop into house music, because everything that you mentioned is stuff that we all sample anyways, right?
Yeah.
But Ivan, for you, that's a little bit further of a way to go. So when you started to develop your own musical taste, what did that look like?
Well, my musical taste came really from don't get me wrong. I loved classical music as well, because that's what I used to study. I used to play piano, so I used to study classical music, and that's all. I would practice and practice. But once I got into high school, my sister really influenced a lot of what I listened to. But my sister was really into heavy metal and goth.
Oh wow!
And new metal and all that area. Going into quite death metal-y. But that stuff was a little bit too far for me. So I used to love that. I used to really get into it. And then she kind of got me into post-rock and bands like that. So as I was going through high school, it really wasn't until I was 16 or 17 that I started listening to Daft Punk. So I was very, very late in the game. I didn't really know much about dance music at all until I was old enough to go out.
Right. Interesting.
So it was really just genuinely overnight. I went to a festival.
Yeah.
Because Daft Punk were playing at a festival in Scotland, 2009, I think, or 2007.
2007. So you caught the pyramid.
Yep, in Inverness, yeah. So I went to go see that. That was the only one that I knew. And then guys like Roman Flugo, Errol Alkin, they were DJing at Soulwax, Tim Deluxe. These guys, I'd never heard of them before, but I just remember being in that tent and thinking, fucking hell, that's so good. Like, I've never, mind blown.
What an interesting time to like get into dance music, because I feel like that. I was talking to somebody else about that a couple days ago, and I was just saying how much of a like cultural shift that was in dance music, to go from like before the pyramid, I would say, like in America at least, dance music wasn't pop music yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was like the cultural shift between like it being underground and it becoming like the big thing. Illyus, for you, it was you started off as a hip hop DJ and a turntablist. So again, it's not like a huge leap to get into house music, but what inspired you to move into house music?
I suppose because we come from this remote place called Scotland. No, it was like I was playing in nightclubs and bars, and I was getting gigs all over the place and playing hip hop. And as far as my city was concerned, I kind of hit a glass ceiling. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't get any more gigs, or so I had to figure out a way of. And when I had an MPC, and I was trying to make hip hop beats. And I remember there was just this. I went to I got dragged along to see Ferry Costin, who. I didn't enjoy the music or anything like that. But the week prior, I went to see Jazzy Jeff, and Jazzy Jeff was just doing his cutting up and having fun and entertaining the crowd, and and obviously playing a couple of his records that he produced. And then the following week, Ferry Costin, I had no idea of the records or anything, but I had someone with me that just knew it. He was like a super fan. And he was going like, that's his remix, and that's his record, and that's his record. And I could just see the people going absolutely crazy. So it was almost like the light bulb moment that I had to figure out a way to find in a faster BPM what I enjoy, what I can, is accessible to me, and which I can still have the influences that I want to use in a style of music. I was already familiar with people like Armand Van Helden and DJ Sneak and people like that, but and obviously Daft Punk as well. But I don't think I ever gave them a genre or gave them a home in my head of where they belong, because maybe a little bit like Ivan's dad, it was stuff I didn't check for, it was stuff I didn't look out for. I was so in this hip hop world.
Right.
And the minute that I read back on people like Masters of Walker, Van Helden, and where they came from, like my kind of thing is always, you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And so I always do research in like music, and same with what I've done with turntables and hip hop. And when I found out what these guys have went through and how their journey came from being hip hop heads, and like Kenny Dope is a massive hip hop head, for instance, everyone knows. Yeah. And then to move into like this rhythm of house with faster BPMs, and you can still be really soulful with it. That was my whole journey into finally making a faster BPM, and then realizing I don't need singers or songwriters or anything like that. I can just create something from me for the dance floors within a day or two.
Interesting. Do you feel like you gained something from starting your career off just as a hip hop DJ?
Yeah, as a DJ, definitely. Like I always say this to Ivan, I always think any hip hop DJ, like a good one, can come and do a house set. I don't think any house DJ can come and do a hip hop set.
Oh, that's true.
And that's what I'm so versatile. I can play any genre. Not that I would in a house set, but I can, when there's a problem that occurs, can switch quickly up or read a crowd, and then also your knowledge for samples and your knowledge. I'm not a musician like Ivan is, but your knowledge for just hearing things that can go with things together. And if that's why I think the hip hop thing is really helped me anyway, and it's helped people throughout time. Like hip hop guys sampled disco records to create hip hop, and they created genres and created what we kind of call today. You just need to look at people like Drake and Lil Wayne and whoever is massive at the moment. Kanye. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, and hip hop and dance music came from the same place, so it's interesting that you've come back to that.
Exactly.
What do you guys remember about your first gigs as solo artists before you guys got together?
Well, I remember mine. The first time I ever did it as a show just under the name Barrientos was, so there used to be a really good night in Glasgow at the Glasgow Art School called One More Tune, run by a local guy called Matthew Craig. And it was a great night. It used to run on, I think it ran on a Friday night or a Saturday night, but it was the weekend anyway. And that was a really big night. But Matthew also ran this night called Cheap and Nasty. It was just like, it was smaller guys, smaller venue on a Thursday at this place called Nice and Sleazy's. Nice and Sleazy's is this great bar in Glasgow. It's just like a bit of a dive in it.
The Alex and Norris, this sounds like a Two Life Crew night. Do you know Two Life Crew?
Yes, I do.
Like, Nice and Sleazy's is just this like, but it's a cool bar. It's like you'll find loads of Glasgow bands that used to hang out there, and like kind of hipster DJs used to hang about there. But it had a basement anyway, and it was just like on a Thursday. And Matthew Craig, I knew him, but I can't remember why he asked me. He just went, "Oh, do you want to come along and play a set?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'll do it." One, I couldn't DJ, so two, I had to figure out how I was going to play music. So I had a laptop. I got a copy of Ableton. I bought this MIDI controller.
Wow.
Yeah. Evolution UC33E. I bought that, and then I bought I don't have it here, but I bought a little tiny MIDI keyboard. So I did it just to trigger little transitions and samples. So then I just hooked it up, and it was the first time I'd ever played. I just went for it. I was like, fuck it. And I had a sound card, so I just plugged it in, and I just played. I think I played to about 15 people, which is not bad.
Hey, that's not bad for a first gig. Most people are playing to like 2 people for their first gig,
because it was cool, because that Cheap and Nasty was exactly that. It was £2 entry, so people would drink upstairs, and if they wanted to come, if they were drunk enough to come dance, they'd pay £2 to come in the door.
Right.
And that was it. Yeah, and I remember a couple of my friends who I'm really, really good friends with now, but I didn't really speak to them, actually came to the gig. But I don't remember them being there because we didn't really speak. We knew who we were because we were in the same school together. But then, they were like, "Oh yeah, we were there at your very, very first gig." They're just at the back. That was it. Yeah, I was like, I just had to learn quickly how to do it, and I was just like, right, fuck it, I'll get it going. I had great fun. I remember it being really fun.
Nice. What about yourself, Illyus?
My first kind of solo projects, I was making music, like getting into the house world, and my first like thing where I thought I was getting somewhere or achieving something in house music was I had this vinyl coming out on Morris Audio, and it was Dale Howard that was going to be on the remix. So I was so excited about Dale Howard was really doing things at the time, like it was going to be on this remix package, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, like now we get kind of, and we're on Radio 1 a lot and things like that like happen at the moment for us, but at that time, like to get a Radio 1 play from Pete Tong, I just remember that being such a massive thing. And it was also a massive thing going back to the hip hop thing, because everyone knew me in the city I come from as like a hip hop guy.
Yeah.
And then I just heard this house records from me, and like all the kind of old school guys were like giving it well done, and there were some guys as well that were going like, "What the fuck are you doing? You're a hip hop guy, sit back down," sort of thing. But yeah, that was
it was a bit different for you, Illyus, wasn't it? Because like you were, Illyus used to be a DJ around Glasgow, so
right?
Like, I don't really remember you having gigs so much as a solo artist, because I think you were always gigging anyway. You were always doing bars and clubs and residencies,
right?
So like. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it took a while before you actually got booked as like an artist.
I kind of got booked. To get booked as an artist individually, it took time because we started to do things as well, and it was, for me, it was more like because I knew so many people in the city. Like to this day, I still do. Like whether it's promoters or DJs, and like so off the back of the couple of records, I would get a residency in a sub club and things like that would happen, but my bar gigs were like the first things where I was allowed to play dance music. And I remember my first one actually was in Mosquito, and I was in another bar around the corner called Buddha, and I was playing hip hop, and I got a phone call from my friend at the time who was a manager, and was like, "The DJ's not showed up. like, you can play whatever you want, come around the corner. And it was literally like a 10-minute walk. So I went like to the other bar. I was like, oh, I need to leave. Like, there's a problem at home. And I just left and I went round the corner to literally play the music I finally wanted to play, and I got an opportunity to play. But yeah, it was a difficult journey, man. But I think everyone has those as DJs and producers, and especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys both managed to float around in the same scene in Glasgow for a really long time before actually meeting. And can you talk about when you were first introduced and how you decided to start writing music together?
Yeah, go for it. We first, like, it's funny because you can be in like, Glasgow isn't a big city, but you know, there's still plenty of people and artists that come and go that you never actually get to meet.
Right.
Do you know? It's just whether it's like out with your friendship group, or maybe you don't know the same people that run with them, or, you know, so you can kind of like, you could go. I mean, there's still DJs that I've never met in Glasgow. Absolutely not. I've not. You know, I probably wouldn't even recognise them if we walked by each other on the street, and vice versa. They probably wouldn't recognise me. But we, you know, Illyus and I, kind of, when we first met, we were kind of put together, and then we just met up for some Japanese food and a beer. And
like a boy band.
It was good. You know, I didn't know this guy, and he didn't really know me, because we were like I don't know, but we were like on way opposite sides of like who we were like running with, you know, because I was more like running with people who were in the art school, and I would go to the art school, and I was on that kind of side, and Illyus was more on like his side, which was like knowing loads of people who loved to party and loved the kind of all clubbing, and like, do you know what I mean? So like, we were on two different worlds almost, you know. I guess honestly, if it wasn't for house music, you know, or being put together, I don't think we would ever have met.
Nah, not really.
Or being friends, because of the, you know, like, it was really we're two different types of people for sure.
It's like opposites attract, definitely, because we went like even sitting across from each other on that first like dinner dates thing, and like we realized we weren't from the same planet, because it's like Ivan had like a full-time job as well, and I'm like kind of this free flowing hustler type person. Like, I try and make a buck out of anything I see, and but then those kind of worlds colliding, it almost was like, that's what was missing of my side of life, like that sort of world where you get introduced into like our tastes in dance music. All of it, that's a weird thing. Our tastes in dance music was so similar. Like we shared a passion for like deep house at the time. It was like Milton Jackson and Detroit Swindle, and we shared that passion where it was like really vibey chords and which kind of like made it great, I suppose, because like you've had these two different people, but there's a common ground there somewhere.
Well, so you talk about like, you know, having the same taste in music is really what brought you guys together. And like you said, opposites attract. How has that played into like the way you guys work together in the studio and like developing a friendship too? Because it seems like you guys know each other really well.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while, really. You know, even to this day, you know, the way you work with somebody and the way we work together, it changes like all the time for the better. You know, like, you know, there's always, to an extent, teething problems when you work with somebody, because there's always going to be creative differences in a way. But I wouldn't call them creative differences. It's just that, you know, difference of opinion on certain things, which we still have, but it's just being able to sort of like get over it, and getting over your own ego, you know, and saying like, you know, unless one of us is going, it has to be this way, you know, and I'm certain it's going to be this way, then the other one of us will go, okay, I can accept that, and you can step back, you know. So like, and as it grew, you know, as we were working together over the years, it became more of like it just became more like a friendship rather than it being two of us working together. It was just like hanging out with your mate and writing records, and that's what made it easier. We didn't ever view it as like, I'm going to go work with Illyus today and it's going to be business only. You know, it's only going to be records that we talk about, and it's only going to be. It was never that. It was always just like, it became us becoming friends, and like now it's like Illyus is like a brother to me, you know, because we speak every day, like, and now that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And and that's the way it developed. It was never really about business or writing records or just having that focus. It was more just it grew naturally that way, and we grew naturally in a way that we could work together really easily.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. It's like when, I could be wrong, but when a lot of people start making music today, like they maybe dream of the big stages and the party life too soon. Whether for us that wasn't the why we do this. It was to do with loving music and enjoying like DJing and like, but you meet someone across from you and you don't have this grand plan. You just kind of do a record and see what happens with it, and it's like a nice journey. And and the fact of the matter, you trust this person as well. In the studio and just out with, like you said, like we know each other so well. We know when not to speak to each other, when to be silent because we travel so much with each other, when we can ask for an opinion, when we moan and argue with each other. It's a little bit like a marriage, like a relationship with a as a family member. But when it comes to music, but I've mentioned there's no ego, like, because like I could make a record all day long. Sometimes we don't sit in the same studio and work together, and then I'm really loving what I've made and I send it over and he'll be like, yeah, and I might change this and I might change that. And then I don't really come with this attitude of like, this is mine and I needs to be like this. It kind of, you need to have an open mind and an open heart with those type of things. And then 9 times out of 10, he'll come back with something that I didn't see or I didn't hear. And I'll be like, wow, man, like you've just took it from here and put it up there, and that's kind of
on the flip side of that as well is that like, knowing when not to touch the record, and not because you think that you have to put your stamp on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
the two examples I would say that kind of stick out to me is Illyus 90% basically wrote "Shout," our record on Toolroom Records.
Really?
And yeah, because you came and you were like, this record, I'm really excited about it. And I was like, cool, let's hear it, loved it. And I had the session open and I was just looking at it going, am I just going to write something on it so I can say I wrote on that record? It didn't need me. You know, it was like going, I'll just leave it. And then I said to Alice, I was like, I think it's perfect as it is. I was like, I don't know what you want me to do with it other than help you finish the record in the sense that, you know, like, let's get it sounding good. And that was it. And the other one I could think of, Illyus, was probably the Duke Dumont remix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because I that was like, you know, mostly it was kind of me, and I was like, Illyus, I've got this thing for this record. I want it to be disco-y and 80s and things like this. And you were just like, I'll just let you run with it, like, and I just ran with it. And those are just the two records that I can remember off the top of my head that either one of us has just went, no, I trust you what you've done on it. It doesn't always need to have your opinion on something. It doesn't always, you know.
Well, I think it's interesting that you guys mentioned that, because I think part of a successful relationship is knowing when to give and when to take. And you guys have really found that balance, and that's probably, you know, kind of you guys unlocked something in your relationship at some point where you understood, like, hey, I know what to do, and you guys, I know when to pull it, and I know when to push, and that's kind of a fantastic thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, you have a PhD in biomedical engineering. I have to.
How did you think that?
Because I do a lot of research, and I happen to like run across your PhD and a couple of papers that you've written with some other people, and I couldn't understand a word of anything. There was something in there about frogs, and I didn't know what was going on. But can you talk? Yeah, or something like that. That was.
Oh yeah, I mean that was just a little. That was another paper that I had my hand in.
Right.
So that was. I mean, what was the question here? Sorry.
Well, I mean, I'm just curious. One, can you talk about how, you know, you were going to school while you guys were working together, and I'm curious to see how you know, taking on such a intense thing as getting a PhD has an effect on your music career, for better or for worse.
Well, to cut a long sort of story short, the sort of reason why I took the PhD on, funnily enough, was actually to give me more time to do music.
Oh.
Because like when you do your PhD and especially in the UK, if you have like a good supervisor, you can have just freedom of time.
Yeah.
Because you aren't told you have to be in at 9 o'clock. You don't have lectures. You don't have to do classes. So I was able to just pick my time. So I would once I got going in the laboratory, I would just go in for 9 a.m. and I would finish at 2. I would do things as quick as possible and as efficient as possible. And then I'd go to his house and we would write records in the afternoon because you were awake by then. Because you'd been working the night before. So he was awake by 2 o'clock. So I'd go into his and we would write some music. And that's just the way I wanted it to go. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think when the PhD is still one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life. And that was mostly just towards the end, but I really wanted to see it through because I don't like to leave things unfinished, and I can't do that. And it's sort of, I'll kind of thank my parents for that because they were like, oh, you can't quit, don't quit things. So that's kind of instilled in my head. So I didn't want to do it. And Illyus absolutely appreciated how much work it was and when I had to do work and when I couldn't do it. There was times that we were gigging at the weekend. I would be in the laboratory Friday, leave at lunchtime. We would fly out, gig all weekend. I'd come back the next morning. I'd be in Monday morning in the laboratory at 9 a.m.
Yeah,
it's just the way it went, and I just did it. I didn't think too much about it. It's just it was just my life at the time.
Yeah.
It was something I really enjoyed. Was my project. It was fun, and you found some papers. I published 4 papers, basically to do with my findings, and they were really super interesting. But music's better. So when I finished, we got more of an opportunity when I'd finished my PhD. It was a little bit of luck and it was good timing, because we got an offer of management from Toolroom, and our agent came back into the fray. Ben, he was like, I'd love to represent you guys again. I think it can work. And this all kind of came when I just finished my PhD. So it was good timing, and then a better time than any, really, just to knuckle down, write music and start trying to build this career. It really did feel like once I'd finished that's when we started really developing as artists.
It's interesting that you say that too, because it's like you finished this one thing and it kind of gave you the space to start the new thing. And you just kind of had to see that through.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I don't think I could ever go back to academia. It's a tough place to work, to be honest. It's even more cutthroat in academia than it is in the music industry.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. How do you compare the two?
I actually think academia is horrendous. I think it's a horrible place to work. Don't even. I could do another podcast with you just on that, and Illyus knows my opinion on it.
Did you find any of my papers on fatherhood? I published loads of those papers.
Me and you can talk about that for days. I have a kid too, so I understand.
I remember I tweeted Funk Butcher because he was, he's talking a lot about the music industry and how difficult it is, and I tweeted him once and I said, the academic industry is far worse. It's a horrible place for me. It's really a lot of fragile people. Mostly men are really fragile about their egos and their intelligence, and it's very vindictive and bullying and very power grab. And I actually felt like the music industry in comparison was really chill, believe it or not. And a lot of people would maybe disagree with me, but it's much better. Honestly, I feel way more relaxed I couldn't go back to it anymore. No way. I would never go back to it. I'd honestly rather work anywhere else.
Well, you say there's even more fragile egos in the music industry? That's crazy.
Yeah, honestly. As I'm saying, I don't want to get into it because my blood pressure will go up if I talk about it too much. I've got a lot of stories and a lot of people that are very fragile, and these are grown men, that are supposedly meant to be intelligent. Doesn't matter, but that's all I'm saying.
So you guys use a lot of vocals in your music, and you talked in another interview about not being religious, but using a gospel vocal in Promise. What is it about gospel vocals and house music that's so compelling?
It's probably just like diva voices and just if you want to talk history, I suppose, and it goes back to what we were doing earlier on, everything in regards to those type of vocals, they've got soul, and then soul attaches itself to rhythm and blues, and in the back in the day, and soul, and even jazz. I know jazz is obviously more instrumental, but these things, the way harmonies work, the records we create, the like we mentioned earlier, are feel good, and with gospel choir, soul voices, most of it's either hardship that rises from something terrible to something amazing. And I think that's when you go to any sort of choir, I suppose, or listen to any sort of soul voice, that energy just translates so well to humanity.
Right.
And then it translates so well into the records we make, because it goes back to the ethos, what we're talking about. When someone that doesn't know anything about dance music, like, how would we describe our records? And the first word that springs to mind is feel good. And that's kind of why I think these vocals always attach themselves really well to the idea process of what we want to work with.
Yeah, and it's also having just the utmost respect for Black music and Black culture, because it's difficult, because you don't want to encroach too heavily into Black culture without saying, well, look what we created, because it's almost to an extent, it's like we're utilizing gospel vocals for sure, but it's with utmost respect and just kind of knowing where it's coming from, and just understanding that, because we're not creating gospel music. Gospel music was created long before we would ever do it, and that's one thing you need to remember. And a lot of people forget that in dance music. You didn't create gospel music. I didn't create gospel music. We're just innocent. We're with coming in with the utmost respect for this type of music, because there's nothing else out there that, just like Ellie said, it doesn't have. There's no other music that comes close to the type of energy that you get from that, or feel good, or hope, or anything like that. So we come from a place of deep respect for it, for sure.
Absolutely.
The beauty is sometimes just getting like an a cappella like that, and you just listen to the a cappella, and like your hair stand up, and like I don't know many other genres and voices and things that can do that. Like, and there's pop music obviously, but if you listen to like a pop a cappella and listen to soul and gospel, like what that does to a person is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that some of these genres have found a way to like transcend, like with gospel, like you can erase the religious part of it, and you can just really appreciate the passion and the love you can hear in that voice. It's like you said, it really like it touches. It's touching to hear.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It just doesn't get any better. Like it's beautiful music, and like for us to be allowed to use it as well is good, because you've got to be fair in music now, especially more than ever, and understanding that like when we use singers, and that they're getting paid appropriately and they're getting percentages appropriately, it's just that's just the sort of, it's not even a conversation that is to be had, because it's a given now.
Absolutely. So we have just one more question before I let you guys go, but what excites you about the future of dance music?
Good question, actually.
It's a good question.
Because it's been such a hard year, like it's such an unknown, to be honest, like from my point of view, really, because we were discussing the other day, our manager Paul was on the text, and he was like, what records have you been doing, and what's finished, and what you still got to do, and we're doing like this big collab at the moment with someone, and he was like, is that done? And I kind of looked at the phone and went, we've got so many records made and so far ahead of schedule that like I actually didn't feel like making music that day. And also partly because I don't know in my head what's happening and where it's going as well. So like, and what I miss out of it all is like DJing to get a feel for a crowd and a feel of what works. And then you come home from that journey and you kind of get an inspiration of, yes, I know what kind of stuff we want to make. And so the future of dance music is kind of a little bit of a dark place for me. The most exciting thing in my head is I literally just dying to see people have a good time. Like that, that's the biggest thing I can't wait for. Like I personally, Ivan is as well, but I'm such a people person. Like I go into the crowd and I talk to people and like I dance with folk, and I just want to play music and just enjoy people again. That's how simple I kind of see. Hopefully, dance music can get back to that.
The future is definitely going to be bright in terms of like just the people, because I think this, like, not to just hark on about this last year, but everybody realized how much they missed clubs and how much they missed socializing and being with people and meeting new people. That's what's going to be the future. You know, you can talk all about like DJs. It's not about DJs. It's like the future's going to be bright. People are going to have this new like approach to life when things reopen and we get clubs going and festivals. That's going to be the future of people just still going, I love dance music, I love it more than ever, and I love being in amongst it. You know, that's what's going to be the future, and that's what's going to be hopeful, and that's what we're both looking forward to.
Absolutely. Beautifully stated by both of you. Well, that's all I have for you guys. I want to send my appreciation to both of you for taking the time out to speak to me today. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and it was great to meet you both.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Man, nice one.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
See you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.